Okay, as you guys kind of make your way back in and jump into your seats, we'll kind of get going here. Another morning of us saying it's been good to be here. It really has. Thank you guys for sharing and talking about what's on your heart and talking about what Jesus is doing in your family and your lives and your businesses. I just love our share times. They're just good. It's good to hear where you guys are at and gain encouragement from where you guys are also. This morning, I want to dive into something that basically is going to be born out of where I've been the last little while. And so this morning may turn into more of kind of a sharing and kind of an opening of the journey that Jesus has had me on the last little while. And Brandon shared some of that. Our journeys have been pretty intertwined the last while. And so I want to share some of that. And I thought it was so interesting, just even the way, Alana and I often talk about the way that it feels like Jesus kind of weaves our stories and the things that we're going through together. And as she prepares for worship and she jumps up here and leads worship, and then it seems like, oh, those songs, like someone else mentioned that they've been thinking that direction. It feels like that happens so often, where the songs that we sing or the things that someone shares connects with where you're at. And it feels like Jesus just has this really cool way of connecting our stories. And this morning, hit me again. This has been one of the more difficult messages to prepare for. Partially my own fault, just not giving it the brain space that it deserved, or maybe not having to a certain degree. And part of it was just, this is a difficult subject that I'm not experienced very much in. And so even coming in this morning and just kind of saying, I think this is where I'm supposed to go, and I don't know what else to do except kind of go where I feel like I'm supposed to go. And I told Alana when I was preparing, I told her I feel like I'm supposed to talk about hope. Like that's where Jesus has been leading me. And in kind of my struggle to prepare for this message, it was really difficult to know and say, yep. Like sometimes it just comes together and you're like, oh, that was easy. Like that's what's supposed to be preached about. Here's how it lines up, and it's easy. This one was difficult. And so even this morning, maybe this is selfish, but even the little confidence boost as I'm sitting in my seat and multiple of you share and say, man, Jesus has really been leading me to think about hope lately. I'm just like, oh, my word, like this has been difficult to prepare for, and to hear that Jesus has been leading some of you the same direction, super encouraging. And so I'm hopeful that this morning connects our stories even more. I'm planning to share some stuff this morning that I have really wrestled with sharing or not. The last while, I know that probably some of you are getting tired of Brandon and I talking about what we talk about all the time. But the brain space that Brandon and I have lived in with our business in the last while has just been consuming to an unhealthy level, to a level that wakes you up in the middle of the night and doesn't let you go back to sleep. And there's just been some serious battling to keep that train on the rails. And it feels like I can be consumed with that type of environment, and that's just everything I think of is processed through that mindset and that lifestyle, and it's just been a work to pull that back. And so through that has come some really hard times, like Brandon shared in Share Time, and some really intense soul searching that I've never had to do before. And so it's both been really frustrating, and yet there's this like tiny bit of like spark and like some hope that Jesus is growing you in a direction that you've not been able to or not been allowed to grow before. And that can be really difficult to say when you're really flustered and beat down. Anyway, so all of that, I have felt pretty sharply the last while, like the desire for hope and the lack of it and what that does to your soul. Like what the lack of hope or the lack of rest, to be able to rest and trust in what Jesus has for you and for your circumstance, that can be really crushing. And I'm hopeful that as Jesus keeps working through that in me, that it leads me closer to him and allows me to reprioritize things that I'm allowing to start from a bad foundation in myself. And I'll expand on that more later. And I spilled tea all over my notes during worship. So great job, worship team. It was getting wild back there. But anyway, so I'm kind of trying to bring a bunch of things together. So pardon my blathering. I told Alana last night, I kind of ran through the overview with her. I told her I feel like the first half is just like blathering. But I'm not sure how else to get to where I want to go because I want to talk about hope. I want to talk about rest. I want to talk about Jesus. And getting there is going to be a little messy, I guess similar to what my journey has felt like recently. So something recently that is totally new to me and pretty intimidating for me to share with you guys sitting here is I have started journaling. And that is something that I thought I would never say or do or try. And it's just been an effort to try and find some mental clarity when you're feeling like your wheels are spinning. It's just been an effort to say, like, I need to try something to gain a little bit of mental clarity. And so I use this notebook for everything. It has leadership notes. It has sermon notes. My daughters draw silly pictures in it. This thing just has everything that I think about in it. And as I was preparing for this sermon, I sat right here, and I was flipping through, trying to find a clean page, and I flipped through something that I had written a while back, and some of my mental processing. And as it just hit me, and I reread it, and as I read it, I felt like this prompting, this push to share some of that with you guys, and that has been a struggle this week because I'm just not really a journally emotion guy, and then to like write those things is a big step for my brain, and then to say, oh, let's go ahead and read them for people feels intimidating to me. But I want so badly the journey that Jesus has me on to be an authentic one and one that I'm willing to share with you guys in the hopes that it connects some dots and maybe some things that you guys might be wrestling with. So I am even at this moment wrestling with what to read and what not to read, but as I kept going back about it and praying about it, I just felt the pull to share some of that with you guys. So I'd like to kind of start from there and just kind of let you in on a few things that I've been trying to process through well. And I realize that for some of you that maybe don't go here all the time, or maybe even those that do, this is not a typical like sermon. I have some really cool stuff. You're going to walk out like, I just want to connect some dots with authenticity as it compares to my journey currently. So the backdrop is that Brandon and I bought a business that needed to be bought, and it has been really good and really terrible, like minute by minute. And there's just been some really big ups and some really big downs and some mental processing and a lot of begging Jesus in the meantime. Anyway, so first off, the things that I've been wrestling with, I am not an expert. I don't have a degree or have even a long period of time of experience or struggle with anxiety, depression, and those kinds of things. So right off the bat, I want to be super sensitive to anybody that has more experience, more knowledge, or just time in battle with those things, because I don't have a long history with them. I have enough to know how it has affected me recently, and enough that I've had to dig deep. That is the extent of what I would like to expand on my knowledge and power to speak from. So if you have a longer battle or more anything than me, I don't want to step on anyone's journey or pain. I would love to speak from my perspective and not shove it on you this morning. So I want to dive into some things that I've been wrestling with. I want to look at, where does hope come from? How do you get back to hope? Like, what happens when you're feeling the hopelessness and you know that hope is what you want, and that just feels like an insurmountable journey? That's been pieces of the last while, is knowing what I want, knowing where I want to get to, but having no idea how to get there. I'd love to start with some things that I wrote and forgot I wrote until Jesus kind of reminded me of them as I was studying this. So here's kind of where we're going to start, and I hope to walk us through the process of lament, or the process of allowing Jesus to work through bad situations. So this was written a while back. Where does rest come from? Not sleepiness, not vacation, not a night off of work. True rest that's present, promised, encompassing, and for me. Rest that connects with my spirit. Rest that tells me I am well taken care of. That Jesus has gone before me and accounted for my situation, every part. If I'm restless, does that show where my confidence lies? Am I trusting in myself? Am I trusting in money? The truth is that I don't have enough ability, brains, or PR skill to win every battle. I think I'm used to getting by on ability, and that robs me of learning to trust a good God. In words, I say that I trust Jesus, so why do I have things rising up in me that are rooted in fear? Maybe I need to be honest about what I want. I want a joy-filled, full life. I really want that more than anything. My current state has probably less joy than I've ever known. I'm going to skip some of this. I don't feel scared, but I'm certainly restless. My restlessness does feel like it's coming from knowing things right now might not go as well as I would like. Did I make a bad trade? I think that's a root question that can overwhelm me. Did I say yes to the right thing? Because now I can't say no. If I were allowed to step out, scot-free, no consequence, would I do it? I'm not sure, and I don't think so, and that's not really on the table, so I'm careful to waste time on the thought. I have ran this stuff past Brandon before you guys think that Brandon might be like shaking in his boots over there. I just want my life to be good, and I believe that it will be. These thoughts and fears feel immature, short-sighted, and lacking trust in the peace that I felt from Jesus about jumping into business with Brandon. The short answer feels like trust Jesus, and I want to, but it's harder right now than it usually is. I badly want to shut the fear down and just do my best each and every day. Maybe I need to slow everything down. I want a lot of things to be changed immediately, and that's not realistic. And when I think that way, it robs me of the good things I do have today. So that was written some time back, and I'd like to start that to kind of frame what restlessness and hopeless can feel like. I want to jump into 1 Peter. Cole, would you care to put that on the screen? So 1 Peter. This is where this message stemmed from, was from these verses in 1 Peter. As I was thinking through where I was at and where Jesus had me, these were the verses that kept coming back to me. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Those verses is kind of where my circumstance and this verse, they met and created this message, I guess. So that's where we're going to start. Don't worry, it's not going to stay hopeless the entire message. So that's where I started from and just said, how do I get some clarity? What does hope feel like? What does it feel like to get back to that? And so I wanted to jump backwards. What a lack of hope feels like a lack of trust. A lack of hope says, I actually don't think that what Jesus says he'll bring me, I don't think that's actually going to happen. It comes back to me actually questioning and saying, do I actually believe, like when it comes down to it in the nuts and bolts, do I believe that Jesus will deliver on his promise? Do I believe that what he says about me and about my future state is true? And that is so difficult because in word I can say, yeah, I mean, the answer, the quick answer, if I asked you guys that, oh yeah, I do. Because I know how to answer that question. But the rubber meets the road when I admit that those things are known, but it's so difficult to reconcile in my brain. It's so difficult to get to a place that I say, That's actually true for me, and I can rest in that fact. I'm actually going to flip the pillow. I'm going to go back to sleep. That's, to me, where it gets really difficult. So I wanted to go backwards in the Bible a little bit and look at, like, what did it feel like? What did people turn to in hopeless situations or in times where Jesus was prioritized lower than the things that they were going after? And so just some really quick examples, because I can feel myself put other gods, other idols on the throne when Jesus isn't there. When I say, okay, I don't actually trust what Jesus brings me, so I automatically put something else in that spot. And it may be relationship, or it may be money, or it may be success, or it may be the next milestone for whatever you're passionate about. And that's where Jesus exposed some of my priorities. So let's jump back. Just a few examples of people in the Bible or situations where you see something get prioritized over Jesus. So in Psalms, you see David, and David was just a wild roller coaster in Psalms. It's awesome. Makes me feel like him. So David goes after, he says things like, how long will God forget me? Like, have you forgotten about me? Do you know that I still exist? And the next, you flip the page, and the next, he's just like over the mountain, like, oh yeah, like God, my Redeemer, my rock. But you see David just kind of lose hope, gain hope, lose hope, gain hope. Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, he asked God, he said, how long will the wicked get away with what they're doing? Like, how long do you just let people do what they're doing? Like, how long do they just get to do what they want to do? And the things that I'm hoping for just get crushed. Job was a chapter full. You guys remember the last time I preached, we talked about Job and just the full chapter of the unfairness of life, like of Job living a life well, and everything he has getting taken and crushed and destroyed. And he questions God and asks God some hard questions, and God comes back and asks him some absolutely impossible questions that make Job recognize and say, oh, okay, I see now how this works. Jumping back even to the garden. So in the garden, everything was good, then things changed. It took so little time between the garden experience with Adam and Eve. It took so little time for sin to enter the chat. The second that the hope of Jesus restoring and continuing to interact with them in the same way that he had in the garden, in the same family there was murder. It took so little time. And just a few chapters later in Genesis, God literally says that all men think about are wickedness. Everything is wickedness by Genesis 6. So we made it 5 chapters. I did a Google search. I think it was like 1,600 years, so I guess it's longer than you think. But that was Google. I don't know what it is. So it was just interesting to me to see how quickly, when God is not where I place my hope, my trust, and my cornerstone for every decision that I make, how quickly things go sideways. Like we go from the Garden of Eden to killing each other in the same family. Wild. In the Old Testament, there's examples of the Israelites and leaving Egypt and then like turning to other gods, just like repeatedly, and even down to having certain kings sacrifice, as they called it, passing their children through the fire, like sacrificing their kids. It doesn't make sense to me to reconcile the children of Egypt and where they came from and what God led them through to just the constant misprioritization and just the really quick movement that it took in their lives as soon as Jesus wasn't prioritized. Anyway, all of that, we're going to try and lift the cloud now. All of that to just point and recognize the shift that happens in my life and in yours when Jesus is not the priority, he's not the cornerstone, he's not what I actually lean on at the end of the day. When I trust anything else, things shift really, really quickly. Placing our hope on anything but Jesus leads to a weak foundation and a misplacement of a core property. Something that has been apparent to me, and Brandon and I have talked about this, is the metrics that I put in place in my life for success, when they don't align with God's kingdom, things get twisted really quick. And I know some of his and my alignment lately has been saying, what are we actually trusting in? Why is it that things feel really good and really bad? Because Jesus hasn't changed. So what is allowing that meter to go up and down? And I'm not trying to project that with correct priorities that life is just a flat line, but one that takes you to the highest heights and then rips you down to hopelessness. There has to be something that comes in place where Jesus brings some sort of stability or hope that you say, at the bottom, this is what I rest on. So why do these cycles repeat? I'm assuming that you guys can identify with some sort of cycle of up and down. And that's what I wanted to discover with Jesus, and I want to kind of unpack with you guys here. When those cycles start to happen and you feel the repetition of saying, man, I'm feeling really great, and now I'm really anxious, and I'm feeling like there's hope, and now I feel like there's none. And those cycles can get really, really vicious. I'd love to dive into a few things. Cole, if you will put up 2 Chronicles. There's some verses in 2 Chronicles that I'd like to bullet point as the first step. So when these cycles are repeating, this verse really speaks out some first steps. It says, then the Lord appeared to Solomon in the night and said to him, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a house of sacrifice. When I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or command the locust to devour the land, or send pestilence among my people. You want to flip it over, Cole? If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. The first step in all of this, do you guys see it in the first part of verse 14? Humble themselves. Humility. That has hit me in the face. There is a humility that has to happen when I say I actually haven't been doing things right. I've actually not looked at things correctly because, as you guys know, I think that I do life correctly, and I'm positive that the rest of you think that you do life correctly. And there's a humility that has to take place when I actually say, I've actually not. I actually don't have all of the ability that I think I might have or that I think I need. There's a humility that has to happen. Like in tandem with you recognizing your inability comes with recognizing God's ability. There has to be both. I can recognize God's capability, but without me actually allowing myself to be humbled and put under and say, I actually don't. I don't know all the answers, and I don't have all the skill that I need. There has to be a humility for you to start receiving what Jesus has and the priorities that he has in place for you. The second part is back to 1 Peter, where it talks about casting your cares. So it says, humble yourself. Cast your cares. Cast your anxieties on him because he cares for you. So there's the humility that happens. There's me saying, I don't think that I actually have been nailing it or that I have all of the things, the abilities and the talents that I need to step forward. What do I do with that? Because that is a really healthy and humbling recognition. The next step in 1 Peter, it says, is casting your cares. That is an amazing invitation. Like it's not just it is a command, it's also an invitation. It's saying, do you know who you're talking to? Do you realize who is offering you and extending a hand to you and saying, do you know who you can pass these cares off on? So the invitation to humble yourself and then say, Jesus, I actually recognize that I don't have everything I need, and you do. And I'm choosing to cast my cares on you. He is strong enough. And that is something I've had to wrestle with because maybe this is a man thing, but I just kind of want to own it. Like I just kind of want to turn the heat up a little bit and flex and just rip through it. Like that's what at some levels, that's what I want. I just want to rip through it. And it takes humility for me to sit in front of you guys and tell my wife and Brandon and whoever else, say I actually don't. I actually don't have what it takes to run this business well or to lead my family well. I don't have everything it takes. I'm not a victim and I'm not powerless, but I don't have everything it takes. It will take Jesus stepping into every circumstance that I step into for me to be allowed to lead well, to teach well, to serve well. I have to have the power of Jesus, and that comes with humility and recognition that I don't have everything. And that is a hard step for me And I would say for every guy in the room, I would probably say for every woman in the room, it is so hard to admit that you don't have everything you need wrapped up inside of you without taking it to Jesus. As I was thinking about this and the locking arms with Jesus, not that we are equal partners, but like the thought of Jesus putting his arm around you and saying, it is okay because I'm here. Like it will be okay because he took me, just slammed me back into Psalms 23. I'd love to read through Psalms 23. And what I want us to recognize is the lack of Jesus just removing the danger. Like the lack of Jesus just reaching down and pulling you out of the spot that you're in. But he promises hope and he promises care while you're in the valley. And Psalms 23 is famous because it's famous. But in this situation, when you're saying, I need hope, I need to recognize what Jesus has for me again, this is paramount. Because what I want is Jesus just to step down and take care of the situation, or whatever you're wrestling with, like just fix my relationships, or make my kids act different, or make my wife or my husband act different, fix my finance. Like I just want someone to snap their fingers and then I would be happy. And the truth is, sometimes Jesus does that. Like sometimes there is miraculous healing, and there's miraculous situations where Jesus does exactly that. And there's often times that he doesn't. Psalms 23 is more than a bedtime prayer. I would love for us this morning, as I read Psalms 23, wrestle with the idea of Jesus allowing you to stay in the circumstance you're in, but giving you the grace and the power and the arm around your shoulder to say, like, you can do this. Like together you can do this. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. I won't want. Like at the end of the day, I won't want. I will get what I need from Jesus. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Like no amount of relationship or accomplishment or finances or success can restore your soul. Like there is only one thing that restores your soul. There's so many other things that puff me up and make me feel good and make me whatever it makes me. There is nothing that restores my soul except Jesus. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Not even for my own, for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you will pull me out of it. That's not what he says. He doesn't say, I won't fear evil because I know that you'll pull me out of it. He says, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Like even though the shadow of death is still present in my life, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me in the valley of the shadow of death. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Like, is there a better promise than that? Like, in the midst of your struggle and in the midst of your circumstance, that you won't just be pulled out, that you actually will be allowed to walk with Jesus and experience his grace and his goodness in the middle of a rough time. Like, I would love the finger snap fix. I would love that. What I want, even when I don't want it, is I want to experience the way that Jesus works. I want to know the way that he communicates with his people. I want to know the way that he cares, because that then enables me to turn and help you guys. It enables me to turn and help other people around me because I know how Jesus does it. I know how he steps in messy situations, and I can't step into a marriage and say, well, then we're just going to pull you out and we're going to fix it. That's not how it works. We're messy. That's just not how it works. And so allowing Jesus to work with me in my struggles is a gift, even when it feels terrible. Oh, man, I told Cole 30 minutes would be plenty. I'm on page 2. Okay. I want to get back to hope. The hope that I plant myself in and have to come back to repeatedly is what I base every decision on, is asking myself, is Jesus enough? Like, are his promises enough? Can he overcome the situation that either he or I have put myself in? Hope lands on Jesus, not on you. Hope actually acknowledges that you don't have it all together, and that's okay. Hope actually acknowledges that your power is pretty small, but as a son and daughter of the King, you have access to everything you need. It admits and says, you're actually right. Between hope and humility, you actually get to admit, I actually don't have everything that I just need for every situation, but I have access to it. That access is pretty encouraging and really tough to get through. And so in the last while, I have wrestled with the truth of knowing these things and not knowing how to battle from them and not knowing how to dive into them. And so I don't really know that I have a clean answer for that. What do you do when hope is gone? What do you do when hope is hard to get to and it's hard to access? It is so easy for me to forget that I am in a battle, that we are in a battle that battles for my marriage, my kids, my soul. It's so easy for me to get numb and get complacent. And what I want to do, I know there's a battle, and I know that I'm feeling hopeless, and I know that I'm feeling restless. What I really want to do is lay on the couch and scroll for 2 hours, and maybe when I get to the bottom of my Facebook feed, things will feel different. Do you guys know what that's like to battle from the wrong perspective? I've done that so much in the last while where I battle from something that is stupid. Alana and I talked about that, when life is overwhelming you and you choose to numb out, you actually only compound the thing that is actually making you want to numb out. If you're freaking out over a financial decision and you choose to ignore and choose to just plug in your phone instead, all you do is continue to give yourself less time to correct the situation and go after something that's not from Jesus. It just compounds. It's so difficult, though. It is a hard choice to make, to say, I will choose to plug in. I will choose to believe that there's hope even if I'm not feeling it, and I'm going to go to the source. I'm going to get back to the source, back to basics, back to humility, and back to casting my cares and saying, Jesus, you are enough. You have to be because you say that you are. That has been a tremendous battle for me to actually be okay with saying that and saying, I don't really even remember how this works. But it has to be true. Being in a battle is something that I would, that will be key as you guys plug these concepts into your own life and discover where you have hope and where you don't. Recognizing that you're in a battle will be key because there is a war. And you don't have the power to just win every battle by yourself. And so understanding where this battle comes from, what might attack you, how that will feel, and battling from the correct place, putting on the correct armor and raising the correct sword will be paramount. And so as you guys battle, I'll just say this really quickly because this is where I go. It's not going to be your phone. It's not going to be YouTube or Facebook or Instagram that's going to bring back any sort of fighting spirit in you. And that is such a quick way for us to get off track, is fighting from an incorrect source. I know Brandon and I have talked about that when we're wrestling with our business and we come back and we said, oh my word, we're overwhelmed because we've been resting in the success and failure of the finances of the business. And all of a sudden we say, hey, what if this is actually Jesus' company? What if he runs it into the ground? Is that our fault? Maybe partially. What if there's actually, what if this is Jesus' company? And if he has goals for this business, he's going to have to be the one that makes it come alive. He's going to be the one that's going to have to make the right amount of money happen so we can do whatever he's asking us to do. And suddenly, when a check comes in the mail, your heart doesn't soar through. And when a check doesn't come, your heart hits the rocks. All of a sudden you say, this has to depend on Jesus. It has to. And when I apply that concept to my kids and my marriage and our church and my relationship with you guys, and I say this has to be sourced from Jesus. If Darius gives me a bad look when I see him in town, I'm not going to hit the rocks. I'm going to say, you know what? It is between Jesus and Darius and I to have a good relationship. If Darius is having a bad day, that's not going to send me into a spiral. If my hope for having a good relationship with Darius just continues to not happen, I still will rest in the fact that Jesus is good and kind, and that at minimum in heaven, Darius and I will high five. That's where I have to go with these tough, tough wrestlings. Fear sits at those tables. Fear sits at those tables and runs that table. And that's what I've had to come up against. And I want to come up against in our church. and in my relationships with you guys is where fear is king, that we battle, we recognize it, we call it what it is, and we get Marian in the shop to blow the shofar, and we start saying, this will not happen. Not on our turf. So I want to battle with you guys. Like, I want to speak life into you guys. Man, I want our family to be full of hope and life. I want us to be aware of what we're going through and to be willing to step in with the power of Jesus in hand and say, this will not happen to my family. This will not happen to my church. Like, I want to fight with you guys. And it's been frustrating to feel like I've been unable to do that at times, partly because of where I'm at and partly because of choices I've made to battle incorrectly and that whole mess. I want badly for our church to be humble, to humble ourselves and say, it's okay if I don't have everything. And I'm going to cast my cares, not quietly and not gently, hand them to Jesus in an envelope. I'm going to recklessly, carelessly, with abandon, cast my cares on Jesus to someone who can actually carry them. Say, I will believe that you have what it takes and admit that I don't. And I will cast my cares on Jesus. And I want to do that with you guys. I want you guys to do that for me. And you guys have. You guys have stepped in when I've not stepped in for myself or allowed Jesus to step in. And you guys have stepped in and prayed for us and brought us stuff and stood in the gap. And I want to do that for you guys. I want hope in our church. I want to speak out against darkness and recognize the battle for what it is. I will not allow fear to live at my table, and with Jesus' help, I will not allow it to live at yours as much as possible. I'd love to read you guys something out of Numbers. Did I give you that verse, Cole, out of Numbers? I think I forgot to give it to Cole. There's a verse in Numbers that has hit me. I'm going to read you another piece out of some things that I had written that I would love. I'll disclaimer it one more time, then I'll be done. This reading out of the journal thing is just super awkward for me. So you guys can just kind of take it for what it is or mute the live stream or whatever. So really quick, though, plug for journaling. I had no idea. I told Alana it feels like when I'm just surrounded and my brain just circles and circles and circles, and you wake up at 3 a.m. and you can't plug your mind. It's so frustrating. It's terribly frustrating. And I told Alana I feel like writing these things down allows my brain to put it in a place and then process forward from it. So just a slight plug for journaling there. So this is something that was written more recently. And I love, if I can say this about my own journey, I love where I believe Jesus is leading me and where he's wanting to help me process through these things. I want freedom from the king. The peace of knowing my God rules the universe. He commands the wind. He posed Job with an impossible list of questions that only he himself could answer. And he says he cares about me. He cares about what I'm feeling. He wants to lead me to new pastures. He restores my soul, and he alone has that ability. I'm finding rest in the fact that success doesn't bring peace, because that belief pushes me to find peace from him. My anxieties never come from a fear that Jesus will not provide for me. They come when I'm providing for myself. I won't be lazy, but I'll do what I can and know that my ability is limited, and Jesus will have to carry the rest. Forgive me for allowing my fear to turn me inward, to make me become tight-fisted with everything that Jesus has given me. And I just want to hand it back. I want to hand over the negative parts that I own, my fears, my inabilities, my shortcomings. I also want to hand over the positives that you've given me, my ability our business, my family, and anything in my life that needs to be built on Jesus. And I want to hand it back. Build in me who you want me to be. Sharpen me, use me, fill me, grow me, and make me to be more like you. You told your disciples that with a little bit of faith, mountains could be cast into the sea. I'm not sure the amount of my faith, but I'm trusting you to move mountains and mountains of fear that I keep bowing to. I'm sorry for bowing to another God. Jesus, I'm asking you to move these mountains. As I wrote that last piece, it was really cool. I was sitting in the church here, and I had music playing and I wasn't paying attention to it. And I'm not a fan of coincidence. As I wrote that last line, I just stopped for a minute, and the song Amazing Grace was playing, and it launched into the verse, and it was so perfect. It was so perfect. To feel the grace and the love of Jesus that steps in and says, it's okay. Like, it's okay. And he steps into that space and allows me to be weak and allows me to have messed up. And he has grace available to not only restore my soul, but to give me hope for the future. Like, that's just tremendous. And I can't gain that from any amount of success or achievement or anything else. So I want to go after the things that restore my soul. I want to fight for those things with you guys. And I would love to hear from you guys if you guys have strategies and ways that you guys see that I need to grow in and ways that hope can be gained. I am so into that. I am all about that. And I would love to hear from you guys that have battled longer than I have. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to leave you guys with a blessing out of Numbers. And you guys have heard it a bunch of times. But this is what I want. I read this the other night to Alana. I said, like, what more could you want from God except this blessing? Like, this is what I want in my life in every circumstance and area. This is what I want from God. So kids, we'll pray this blessing and then you guys can go to class, okay? Give me like 3 verses, okay? So I want to leave this with you guys and then we'll be done. So this comes from Numbers, and this is God speaking to Moses, and he told him to tell Aaron and his sons, and he said, this is how you'll bless the people of Israel. He said, go say this to them. He said, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Like, that's what I want. I want a peace-filled life that rests in Jesus, knows that the top and the bottom of every situation, I have what I need, and I'm well taken care of, whether I feel like it right now or not. But the truth is that I am taken care of. Like it says in Romans, those who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. And if we live in that reality and say, I have what I need, and I will find hope even when I don't feel like it. I would love to leave that with you guys. Thank you for listening to this scattered message. I hope it connects with some of you. I'd love to chat with you guys after. Kids, you guys can roll out.